You know, there's only two ways to solve a problem. And actually, one of those ways doesn't even work. So there's really only one way to solve a problem. But I'm going to talk about both anyway, so you got the contrast and you can sort of make up your own mind about this whole deal of problem solving, whatever it is. Doesn't even matter what the problem is. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about is the one that does not work. It's going to be much more recognizable because it's how most people operate, and most people are not very happy right now. That's why unemployment is so high. It's why debt is just through the ceiling. In fact, we keep breaking the debt ceiling and increasing the debt even more, both on a national macro level and even on a micro level in individual families and individual people. Debt keeps going up, and we keep living that same lifestyle, paycheck to paycheck. Unemployment is just, it keeps being terrible. All these things that are happening. People are sick and diseased largely from lifestyle choices, and it's because we go about trying to solve these problems in the worst way possible, and that's why it isn't working. And we have to take that feedback that life is giving us. Life is basically telling us that, hey, dummies, what you're doing ain't working, so you got to make some refinements. And if you're honest about what you're doing isn't working, then you're that at that moment. That's when you really become free to move forward, make those refinements, and start getting more of what you want and less of what you don't want. So here's the first way that does not work. It's trying to change things that are going around outside of you, outside of your mind. It sounds a little bit cliche, but it's so true. You have no control over the value of the dollar. A lot of people will gripe and say the value of the dollar, if that were just better, if the economy is better, which you have no control over, if my boss were a little bit more kind and gave me a bigger raise, if we just got a new president of the United States, then things are going to be better. Once the economy bounces back, then whatever. The housing market comes back, the value of my home goes back to where it was a few years ago. Whatever it is, we put all this worry and all this energy into things that we have no control over whatsoever. And then we lose sleep and we got all this chaos in our lives, and we keep living the way we've been living as things continuously, progressively just get worse year by year. And things just don't get any better because we're focused on the wrong thing. We just are. So, that will bring me to the one method of problem solving that actually does work, and that is you work harder on yourself than you do on these things that you have no control over. You simply increase the value of that piece of real estate that's between your own ears. You get that thing going, then these other problems over here tend to disappear. They really do. Not on their own. They don't disappear in a vacuum, but there's reasons why these problems are disappearing and they're being solved. It's because you gained the skills that you need to be able to solve those problems and get what you want. If you become more valuable to today's economy, not the economy 30 years ago, if you become more valuable to today's economy and where you're at and where we are at as a country and as an economy, you get paid more. That's it. And you become more valuable to today's economy by working on that piece of real estate in your mind. All the problems that are going on in your life exist right here. It's because of you. You are at the center of every problem that's going on in your life. But because of that, you're also the solution. If you want to be, and maybe you just needed to know what to do. So now that you know what to do, work on this up here. And don't just take my word for it. Be a student of life, the university of life, those hard knocks of life. But you got to learn from those lessons, man. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, year after year, and you haven't taken the lesson by now that what you're doing is not working, then you're the source of your problem. Now, if you can be honest with yourself and say, my goodness, I've been diseased chronically for years because of what I've been putting in my mouth. I'm broke for years, living paycheck to paycheck. Nothing is getting any better. That's me. I've messed up. At that moment, when you can honestly say that and believe it, that's when you have the freedom to start solving those problems and moving forward with your life instead of staying stuck. Now, most people are just completely, they're dead wrong. And most people are going to try to fix their problems by electing a new president, by putting all their worry and their stress and their energy into their boss to give them a bigger pay raise, or I don't know, whatever it is, stuff going on around outside of them. Doesn't even matter. That's what most people do. And most people end up dead or dead broke by the age of 62, depending on the federal government, friends, and family as the main source of their income. And they're also chronically diseased with multiple diseases. 98% of the population falls into that category. You don't want to do what they do. So your proof positive validation that you don't want to attack problem solving the same way that most people do is because that's how most people are trying to solve their problems, by working on this stuff outside of their brain instead of working on the one thing that truly matters, which is their brain. In fact, this is the only thing we have complete control over. We don't have any control over the value of the dollar, what the economy is doing, the job market, the housing market, who's president, and all that stuff. We don't have control over that. We just don't. Not individually anyway, but we have complete control over this. And this is what's going to determine our value to the marketplace, and that's going to determine how much money we make, and our skills is going to determine, what we know, what problems we can solve, health problems, financial problems, all those things. So now that you've taken in this video, and hopefully you just noticed what life has been trying to teach you all these years, so you're not just taking my word for it blindly, but you're noticing some patterns that people do and what they get. Have you noticed the pattern of people who speak that language of, if only my boss were more kind, if only we had a different president, if only the economy would bounce back? If you've noticed that people that speak that way and believe that way, have you noticed how they're living? Those are the same people that are living the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle and all the chaos that comes from it. They're also typically the people that are sick and diseased. So if you don't want what they got, a paycheck to paycheck lifestyle and sickness and disease, don't speak like they speak. Don't believe in what they believe. Don't believe that you're where you're at because of your boss or the president or the political or economic winds. Don't believe you're where you're at because of those things. If you do, you're following that same pattern, and odds are you're going to get what all those other people got. So don't do that. Start genuinely believing, not blindly, but believing that you're where you are at because of you. Because you didn't develop this piece of real estate in between your ears. You didn't gain the skills that you need to be able to get what you want. Believe that. Then you got the freedom to move. And by the way, a lot of our millionaires and billionaires in this country, these are people that used to be homeless. They're people that grew up in families on welfare. How did they move from that place to this other place that's clearly on the other side of the fence? It's not because something changed in politics or something changed with the economy. They worked on this right here. They worked on this. They became more valuable to the economy. They learned how to take care of their health. They did all those things. They just increased the value of this. And they went from a welfare family to millionaires and billionaires doing great things, paying it forward, helping a ton of other people. That's how they did it. They did not do it by trying to change government or change the value of the dollar. They didn't do it by putting their energies there. So if you want what they got and the success that they've had in their lives, start finding out some of the things that they did, the beliefs that they started prescribing to. Find out how they broke out of that circular pattern from their family, because most people that grow up on welfare, they stay there. They raise families that are on welfare too, and then their kids raise families that are on welfare. And until somebody breaks that circular pattern, and they break that pattern by starting to think differently, and they work harder on this than they do the economy, and they want it really badly, some fire in the belly to do that. It takes a lot of fire in the belly. But that's how you solve your problems. There's two major ways that people go to attack their problems. One of them completely sucks. Those are the people that stay in the mess. And then there's the other, the one that's far less commonly sought after as a method of solving problems. That's the one you want to do. And your proof positive validation goes back to the fact that most people are wrong. When you have 98% of a people who end up either dead or dead broke by the age of 62, depending on the federal government, friends and family as the main source of their income, and they're all believing in the same stuff fundamentally, then obviously what they're believing in and what they're doing is not what you want to do, because you do not want to end up dead or dead broke by the age of 62, depending on the federal government as the main source of your income. If you do want that, then I suggest you grow your vision, because it sucks. But I would imagine that you don't really consciously want that kind of a life for yourself or your family, right? So attack your problems by developing this. Work harder on yourself than you do your job, or than you do whatever is going on outside of you that you have no control over yourself. The other day I was walking down the road, and some guy, probably a really nice guy, I felt bad for him, but he said, and the government just keeps on taking more money out of my paycheck and out of my pocket, just ripping my heart out from my chest. And those are the kinds of things that most people are saying, and those people that follow those patterns, they're the ones that are living a lifestyle of debt, and they're broke paycheck to paycheck, some of them worse than that. So don't do what they do, don't believe in what they believe, or you're gonna sound like that, and you're gonna have that kind of a lifestyle, and that's not a good way to live. So don't give your pain and your heart from your chest out to these other entities that just don't have very much planned for you. Develop this. That's how you solve your problems effectively, instead of staying in the mess. Man, I hope I drove that point home enough. I know a lot of this was redundant, but a lot of people just don't get it when they hear it once or twice. So watch this video again, and you'll hear it a dozen more times. And if you need any help, if you need some ideas, I'm a guy who was one step away from being homeless. I really was. It was very scary. I turned all that around. How did I do it? Well, I followed the pattern that approximately 2% of the population follows. I started working harder on myself than I did my job. At the time, I didn't have a job, and that's a big reason why I was almost homeless. But you get the meaning. I started to make that shift from blaming the economy and the fact that my former employer sold my job to the highest bidder, which happened to be in India. My job was offshore. My boss, or the owner of the company, sold my job. But I made that shift from believing that that was why I was where I was at, to taking personal responsibility. I had that job for 5 years, by the way, before it was sold to India. 5 years. I went the extra mile. I didn't just do what I was supposed to do. I went the extra mile, because my plan was to retire there and do what most people do. So when I lost that job at no fault of my own, and I was suddenly broke and almost homeless, I figured I was in that set of circumstances because of what my boss had done. That was BS. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what I believed, and my lifestyle reflected that belief. So in actuality, during that 5 years, I had some spare time after work and things like that. I could have been doing something with that spare time to be faithful with that time, to grow an income that I own, that in 5 years could have surely surpassed what I was making at this job, and then I'd have been more than okay financially, but I didn't do that. In fact, most people that have a job, they are not being faithful with their spare time. Most people that have a job, well, first of all, it's important that you know, if you have a job, 100% of your income, if that's all you have is a job, then 100% of your income, your family's livelihood, is at the mercy and the vulnerability of somebody else, and you do not own your income. You do not own your family's livelihood. Somebody else does. That is not my opinion. That is just a logistical fact, whether you believe it or not, and you should believe it, because it's true. And whatever you're doing in your spare time, if you are not doing anything to develop your brain, to be faithful with your time, build an income that you own, because you're not going to offshore your job or your income or whatever you're doing to India. You're not going to sacrifice your family's livelihood. If you own your income, it's yours. You own it. And you can do that in your spare time outside of a job. So if you're faithful with that time that you've been given, man, if something happens to your job, which it could because you don't own it, then you're going to be okay. Your family will be okay. And most people make that vital mistake. That's one big reason why unemployment is so high. People don't take responsibility for what they've for where they're at in their lives, and they're not faithful with what they've been given, so they get less of it. If you're faithful, you'll get more, and that's an absolute law, 100% of the time, zero exception. So be faithful with that time, friends. But to get back on track from that bunny trail, I'm a guy who was one step away from being homeless, and I turned it all around by focusing more on what's up in here and working harder on that, rather than what was going on around outside of me and what happened to my job and all those other things. And that's what started this beautiful path, this journey of solving those devastating problems, and where I'm at today, and where I'm going to be tomorrow, because I'm always going to be. I'm not going to shift back to where I was before. I'm not going to get an ego and become pompous and think, okay, I've had some success now, I'm going to be okay, and I'm just going to ride this out. No, I'm going to keep on making those refinements and working harder on this than I do my home-based business that I own. I own a home-based business. That was the vehicle, but I worked harder up here on my brain than I did my home-based business. And if you have a job, the same thing applies. Work harder on yourself than you do your job. That's how you're more likely to get the promotion. It's true. Life itself is going to promote you more if you work harder on yourself than you do your job. I have a home-based business. This amazing vehicle. That's the vehicle that I used to go from almost homeless to declaring financial freedom and independence. I can retire on an income of my own personal resources. Only about 2% of the population can do that. So you want to find out what we are doing and be sold on that rather than what the 98% are doing. Don't believe in that garbage that the 98% is speaking and living. They speak it, they live it. You don't want that. You want what the minority has. It's a good place to be, and it's worthwhile. If you want to know more about what I'm doing, just ask me. I'm not going to try to sell you on this. I don't even want to work with people unless they can totally keep an ego at the door, because ego gets in the way of everything. Ego is the one thing that encompasses everybody's problems is an ego. And ego, by the way, is not synonymous with arrogance. Most people think it is, but it's not. So anyway, if you can just kill any ego that you have, the ego that's kept you broke, the ego that's kept you stuck, just chuck it. I had a big ego. I wasn't arrogant by any means. I've always been down to earth. Actually, I've always been extremely shy. But I had a huge ego that kept me broke. A huge ego that almost got me homeless and kept me there for a couple more years until I learned to kill that ego. And then everything changed. So if you want to work with me, you got to kill your ego. And we'll work on that together. You just have to have an open mind, a willingness to learn how to destroy ego instead of building it up every day. And follow directions. And we can do this. If you're even interested. I have no idea if you are, but if you're looking for a vehicle to help you out, to solve some of your problems, and you're willing to work harder on yourself than you do on those problems and things going on outside of you, and we can begin crushing an ego together, and you can follow directions, then we'll do this, and we'll build something really, truly wonderful that not only helps you, but helps a lot of other people as well, because I don't want to work with anybody that's in it just for themselves. I know you've got problems to solve, but I'm telling you, the best and most effective way at solving your problems is we help other people solve their problems, and your problems disappear. It's a beautiful synergistic thing, and it's the only way I work with people. I don't want to work with people that just want to help themselves. I want to work with people that want to help other people as a means of helping themselves. It's the best way to do it. Instead of asking, how can I make myself happy because I'm sad? You should be asking yourself, what can I do to make other people happy, because that's going to make me happy too. And it does. It really does. When you light up somebody's day genuinely, and you know it, you see it, they tell you so, it makes you feel good. And the same thing with coming out of debt. If you have a vehicle that is like the one that I've got, you help enough people pay their bills, your bills, they disappear. It's a beautiful thing. Reach out for help. I'm here. There's help all around you. You just got to reach out for it without an ego getting in the way. And you got this. You were totally designed for greatness. Most people won't live up to it, but you are not like most people because you made it to the end of this 20-minute video. By default, you're not like most people. So I hope you reach out. I know you got it in you to reach out for help because you made it 20 minutes into this friggin' video, which is pretty amazing. So don't stop here. Just reach out for help and accept it. It's here.